welcome to this special edition of ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups and entrepreneurship. And I'm calling it a special edition because I'm coming to you live this time around, not from Bangalore, but Chennai, another city that's just as entrepreneurial with a lot of exciting startups. Before anything else, let's take it to the headlines first. We kick off this special edition of ET Now Startup Central with a conversation with one of Chennai's hottest startups. A conversation with Girish Mathrubootham, founder and CEO of Freshdesk, coming up on the show. Who raised what last week? We tell you in this funding meter by Venture Intelligence. And the picture is not looking pretty going by the data. Flipkart CTO Punit Soni finally breaks his silence on his rumored exit, rubbishes rumors of an exit after that high-profile management shakeup. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba clocks a fresh milestone in GMV, crosses trillion yuan mark, even as it makes fresh plans for an India foray. And finally, on our special segment, Best Advice Ever, we have the founder of WebEx, Subra Iyer, sharing the best advice that he received in his career that you can benefit from. We kick off the show then, like we promised, with a conversation with one of Chennai's most exciting startups, and a startup that's really putting India on the global map with the work that it's doing in the SaaS or the software as a service space. We're talking about Freshdesk founder and CEO Girish Mathrubootham, who told us that perhaps he's glad that he's not a unicorn going by the negative connotation that the word has. He also talks about the milestones that he's charting over the next 12 months. Let's listen in.
This year and probably the next year is what we internally call as our build year. So where we are moving from a early stage startup to a successful high growth startup to like building a global company. So I think in terms of milestones, in the next 2-3 years, I think we will hit a lot more traction in terms of revenue growth, and you can expect a lot more. The most important milestones are, of course, new product innovations, which you will see over the course of the next few quarters.
Right. Everyone's favorite term to gauge success is, whether it's a unicorn in terms of valuation. Where does Freshdesk really stand in that parameter?
Okay, so we have never actually chased being a unicorn. So one thing that's public information is the last round valuation that we were at, which happened in April last year at around $500 million. So we are not raising money, and so we don't know the answer. But I think we don't really worry about these things. And today I think it's probably a bad term to be called a unicorn because there's so much of unwanted distraction, and then there's a new term called unicorps. So we'd like to stay away. But jokes aside, I think there is a fundamental difference to being a public market unicorn and a private market unicorn. So in the public market, it's much harder to get unicorn valuation because the public in general are more, the markets are more mature. So I think we would definitely want to be a unicorn, a public market one and not a private one. So I think that's our goal.
Right. You've opened a swanky new office at a time when, everybody is talking about cut down in spending and caution seeping in. Is that a sign that perhaps Freshdesk is doing well? You don't have to worry as far as, burning cash and profitability is concerned?
So I think, we have always been contrarian. So in 2014, when we raised $31 million from Google Capital, Axel and Tiger, we had all the money that we had raised the previous round in the bank. And even at that time, I said, when money is available at attractive terms, we will just take it because it will help us during a rainy day. Nobody believed that such a downturn would happen. In 2015, when we raised $50 million, we had $35 million in the bank, more than the last round combined, right? So last round that we had raised. I said in an interview that winter is coming and we are just getting ready. So I think what we did well in hindsight is, we could all of us saw that there was a great amount of investor interest in investing in Indian startups. So there were attractive valuations and money was available to us from premium investors at good terms. So it made sense to take the money. But we were not, like the nature of our business is B2B SaaS, so we're not burning cash like a consumer business. So we raised money when we didn't need it. So now we are in a position of strength. We're still sitting with more than 75% of the money that we raised in the bank, like we have not touched it. And so it is, I always believe that cash is king. So it's good to be able to be in this position where we are strong. Now we can acquire good talent as well as good companies when they are available.
Finally, Girish, is mobile going to be the next big thing, and how you're really tailoring products for that? I know you're working on that space closely with a few beta trials, but take us through the opportunities there.
See, mobile is not the next big thing. It already is the big thing. So we all...
from a SaaS perspective.
Yeah. So I think especially if you look at even India as a market, we have shown how big mobile can be. So we really at Freshdesk believe that mobile is the future, and so in fact more than just having a mobile support system, what we recently launched was we launched a product called Hotline, which is tailored towards real-time customer engagement for mobile first companies. So these are companies like say Uber or let's say Swiggy or Myntra, where let's say the customer actually lives on the mobile app, right? So if your customer is always using a mobile app, where do you expect them to go and find the support phone number or email address? So we put support in the app.
Refreshing to hear a startup talk about, having a very strong cash balance in this environment. But Freshdesk is certainly a company that you need to watch out for. Moving on from that to our weekly funding meter, who raised what last week? And to tell us about that, we have another Chennai-based company, Venture Intelligence. Arun Natarajan, thank you for joining us on the show. And it doesn't look like a pretty picture. Dismal, in fact, going by the data. Should we see this as a one-off, a sign of things to come? And also take us through the key deals, however few they may have been.
Sure. In terms of venture capital fund investments, this is indeed, the slowest week. I would say we've just seen about half a dozen deals worth just $9 million in terms of value. So the trend has been on the downward slope for the last few weeks, and I think it is set to continue. There's quite a bit of nervousness, and it's more of a wait and watch kind of thing rather than a complete stop, I would say. So in terms of the transactions, we've seen a couple of education technology companies raising capital this week. We saw Avagma, which is focused on higher education, more from an online learning kind of perspective. They've raised capital from family offices of Infosys co-founder Chris Gopalkrishnan, as well as Hexaware and AppTech co-founder Atul Nishar. And then we had Proparco, which is the French government's development financial institution. They put $2 million into IFMR Holdings, which is a platform for financial inclusion. And then we saw another education company, which is Flipkart, which is more in the online tutoring marketplace kind of company, raise capital from both Bloom Ventures, which is a seed fund, as well as a strategic investor, S. Chandan company, which is in the education publishing space. So in terms of the kind of deals, interesting mix of both family offices, venture capital investors, as well as strategic investors.
Arun, in terms of sectors, we're clearly seeing education and financial sector, kind of making a comeback. Is this a sign that investors are putting their money in the so-called safe sector, so to speak?
Yes, earlier in the year, when we saw this nervousness set in, we saw kind of interest going into the B2B kind of portals. So now, we are clearly seeing education technology companies, which were kind of almost given up in the big, 2015 time frame, and it was all consumer internet kind of companies. Today we are seeing some of those education, while some of the investors are very focused, especially entrepreneurs, Infosys and Mohandas Pai Tata, for example. They've been passionate about education, but in terms of the pure financial investors coming in, we are clearly seeing a return of interest to that space. And fintech has been hot, and it seems to be continues to attract investor attention that much.
Thank you so much, Arun, for joining us. Maybe we will have a more detailed conversation next week when hopefully the deal flow picks up. But moving on to the next exclusive interview that we have on the show, Flipkart CTO Punit Soni has been in the news for the last few weeks because of his rumored exit after that high-profile management change. But he's really rubbished those rumors in a conversation with Rahul. He's also spoken about the innovations and trust that Flipkart's going to give in the product space going forward. Let's listen in.
It's one of the best times to be in the country right now. I think some of the top 2 or 3, observations I've had is, number one, so many young people. It's incredible, and all of them have interesting and crazy ideas. So I think that's something that's phenomenal. The energy is there. The second thing that's interesting is they're all coming up with very wide and varied kinds of ideas. Talking from virtual reality to 3D printing to, all sorts of cool things to work on. I think India in earlier era at least was a little bit more constrained. Now actually what's the coolest part I see is anybody who's even graduating from school thinks they can build the next Google. And I'm sure that if we actually think like that, then in a decade there will be another Google that will pop out of India. So I think that's a phenomenal observation. I think that's something that's happening in the country. I think that it's actually just still in early stages, which is, believe it or not, you would think that it's so mature and things are happening, but we still have about a decade or two to go before the absolute madness and craziness will start. So exciting time, high energy, good work. I can't wait to see what the next decade brings about.
People would draw parallels, the mobile push, the app-only sort of a push that Flipkart thought. But now, you also say that there are a lot of people still on desktop. So how, would your priorities be both desktop and mobile? How would this pan out?
The priority should be wherever the user is. I think this isn't a choice. I think our mindset should be mobile, but we should make sure that we build the best desktop website possible, and we should build the best app possible, and we should allow people to access it. We should build light. We should allow people to actually access it even if they don't want to install an app. We should think about how the iOS app should look, so it should be across the board. And I think, to me, these are not channel-specific choices.
As much as rumors would say you're still at Flipkart, could you clear the air for us? What's really brewing?
I'm still at Flipkart.
And you would continue to be at Flipkart?
I'm still here and I'm continuing to be here.
Okay, looks like Punit Soni is here to stay. But moving on to the big international lead of the day, we're talking about Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, which clocked a major milestone in terms of GMV. They've crossed the 3 trillion yuan mark, which roughly translates to $463 billion. Now this at a time when Flipkart set a target of $20 billion over the next few years. So you can really get a sense of the scale that Alibaba operates at. And that's not all. They're also chalking out plans to enter the Indian market. Now there are 2 rumors doing the rounds based on media reports. They are looking to talk to Tata Group for this, and they are also looking at an investment in Paytm's marketplace. Remember, Alipay is already an investor in Paytm. So watch this space. This is going to be really exciting. I think it's ultimately going to be Amazon versus Alibaba as far as the Indian e-commerce space is concerned. On from a Chinese player to an Indian player that's hitting the public market, we're talking about Infibeam, one of the first e-commerce IPOs that's being watched very closely. They've kicked off the IPO today, and the subscription doesn't look too exciting, 0.17x times. But remember, a lot of people thought the IPO price was overvalued. Let's listen into what founder and CEO Vishal Mehta has to say on the first day of the IPO opening.
We already have 12 logistics centers, and we are expanding into 75 additional logistics centers in 70 cities. What we provide in terms of Build-A-Bazaar marketplace is an opportunity for merchants to allow them to sell it on their own URL or the destination, as well as other marketplaces. And that essentially allows us to keep on capturing more of the services revenue, which if you look at year over year, last year that number was 66 crores. In the first half of September, we reported 48.5 crores in services revenue. So that has been going historically. If you look at our numbers, in about 13-14, we reported about 30 odd crores in services revenue, which became 66 crores, in 14-15, and in the first half of 2016, we reported 48.5 crores.
And on our special segment today, Best Advice Ever, we speak to Subra Iyer, the man who founded and sold WebEx to Cisco. He's a serial entrepreneur, and he shares the best advice he's received in his career that you can benefit from. Let's listen in.
Coming back to some of the mistakes, I would say it's people related, which is judgment. People always say you should, get advice, you should learn from others. But the important thing, the next level that people need to understand is you should know in what subject, whose advice you need to take. The same person is not the right person to give you advice on strategy. A different person may be the right person to give you advice on finance. A different person may be the right person to give you on innovation. So having a bunch of people and having multiple dimensions to look at it, and having the judgment to discern whose advice you take for on what is probably the number one factor that has helped to make me successful.
We certainly hope that helps you and me. But moving on to the final segment of the day, Number Crunch. And the number we are crunching for you today is $10 million. That's the total commitment in prize money as far as the ICC World Cup T20 is concerned. Now, on the face of it, it might seem like a big amount, but I'm willing to bet that most of the cricketers make more than that amount in their individual endorsements. Of course, it's turning out to be an exciting tournament, so we really have to wait and see how the outcome finally works out in the end. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of ET Now Startup Central. It's been a pleasure coming to you live from Chennai, covering a different mix of startups, and we hope to join you again very soon. Thanks so much for watching. Keep it with ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.